Hello, today I'm looking at a strategy and writing an expert advisor based on the Ichimoku. I've loaded a section of a chart here with the Ichimoku indicator showing. There are several lines on the Ichimoku indicator. There's the Tenkan Sen, the Kijin Sen, the Chikou span, and the Senkou span A and span B. For this expert advisor, I'm only going to be using the Senkou span A and the span B, and naturally that means the cloud in between them. Now I've just expanded a part of the chart, and this is showing an example of a short entry. So at point A there, where the candle has closed outside the cloud, and then the price moves back inside the cloud and closes at point B. So that's important, that the candle must move inside the cloud and close inside the cloud. And because I'm selling, this candle is moving in from above. And also the span A is above the span B. Point C there on the diagram shows the two span A and span B, and it's important for a sell trade that span A is above span B. If span A is below span B, then I would be in a buying mode. And then because the candle has closed at point B inside the cloud, I'm opening the trade at the opening of the next candle, which is point D. And the exit point, the take profit for this, is at the span B line, which you can see there is shown by point E. Now, this is a floating take profit. It moves depending on where the span B line goes. So I'm not fixing the take profit at where that span B line is when I enter the trade. I will adjust it as each new candle opens. And so that's why I'm closing at point E rather than at the span B point where the candle opened. And when I describe these points, and I've just put a 0 on the chart there, so that will be bar number 0 at the point where I'm entering the trade, bar number 0 being the bar that's currently open. And then I'll also be talking about bar number 1, which is where bar number 1 had to close inside the cloud, and bar number 2, which had to close outside the cloud. And the rules for this are simple. I'm going to sell if span A is above span B, and the price crosses into the cloud from above and closes inside the cloud. I'm going to buy if span A is less than span B and the price crosses into the cloud from below and closes inside the cloud. And the take profit is going to be at the span B line, and it's floating, so it will move as the span B line moves. And the stop loss is also going to be floating at a 1-to-1 from the entry price to the latest take profit. So as that span B line moves up, the imaginary stop loss line will also be moving down, and it will be equal distance from the entry point of the trade to that span B line. So now let's look at the code to write the Ichimoku expert advisor. As usual, I have an MQ5 version and an MQ4 version. The code inside these MQ5 and MQ4 files are the same because I want to write all of the code once for both MQ4 and MQ5. So I have the standard copyright, link, version. I have property strict here simply because I keep them the same. That's not used in the MQ5 version. The MQ4 version is the same, and they both have this include Ichimoku v1.mqh, and that's where all the logic is going to be for this. And here is the Ichimoku v1.mqh file. I've also included property strict there simply because it helps with syntax checking when I run the compiler on the MQH files. This does use framework, and this will use framework version 3.02. I'll be describing the changes to the framework after I go through the expert advisor because they're not big changes from 3.01. I've included this file framework.mqh. Notice that's a relative location with the quotation marks. This is inside the expert folder. And the only reason for having a separate framework.mqh file is that I can go into this one file and change the version of the framework that's going to be loaded. So if I look at that framework.mqh file, it does nothing more than #include orchard frameworks framework underscore 3.02 framework.mqh. So I can include that at the beginning of all of the files in this expert advisor, and I know that they will all load the same framework version number, and if I change that version, I need to go to just one place and just change that here. So this will load the framework for the Ichimoku.mqh file, and I also have that statement at the beginning of the expert file so that I can run syntax checks on the expert on its own. The inputs There are strictly a number of inputs for the Ichimoku indicator, but I'm going to be just using the defaults for it today, so you can add your own inputs here for the Ichimoku values if you want to. I'm not using them. So the only inputs I have are the usual order size, a trade comment, and a magic number. And I've set the order size here to 0, just to make sure that if you simply take this and compile it, this won't run. You will need to make changes here to the default or at the input screen to make this run. And then an include statement here at the expert.mqh. That's also inside the expert folder. Let me just expand this. This is my Ichimoku v1 folder inside Orchard, inside experts. I've got the v1.mq4, MQ5, and the MQH file, which we're looking at the moment. And in the same folder, I have that framework, which sets the version, and the expert file. That expert file defines a class called CExpert, and then I simply declare a CExpert with the asterisk. It's a pointer, and my variable name for that is just going to be called expert. Then the onInit event handler, I initialize the expert, so I create an instance of it. Expert equals new CExpert, and the only inputs to that are the order size, trade comment, and magic number. And then I return expert.init result. So typically an onInit returns a result which shows whether the initialization succeeded. All of that work is done inside the expert class, so I'm returning the init result from the expert. In onDinit, all I want to do is delete that expert object, so just delete expert to clean up the memory. And in the onTick event handler, I'm going to call the onTick method of the expert. That's everything then for the Ichimoku v1, and the main logic is inside the expert class. This is the expert file. I've just made a quick note of the strategy here in the comments. Also include framework.mqh, and that allows me to make sure that anything I reference from the framework here is included if I simply ran a compile on this file. Now, a compile on this is not going to create an output, it will just run a syntax check. This is my class definition. Class name, CExpert, inherits from with this colon, and it's a public inheritance CExpert base. The public inheritance means that public methods and variables of CExpert base will be also public inside CExpert. If I don't include this, then everything in CExpert base is hidden from the application that uses CExpert. I have no private variables or methods. I do have some protected. So mHandle is the handle to the indicator. This is only used in MetaTrader 5. MetaTrader 4 uses indicators differently, but there's no harm in creating a variable here that is accessible by both. I just won't use it in MetaTrader 4. Then I have a method called loop, and this is called by the standard onTick event handler. And then I also want to update the take profit and stop loss in this method. I said that the take profit was a floating value, so I need a method to update that as each new candle opens. And the only argument to that is going to be the take profit number. So you'll see that in a moment. Then the constructor, as I said, when we called from Ichimoku v1.mqh, it takes order size, trade comment, and magic number, and then a destructor. Now in the constructor, CExpert : CExpert, I'm passing in the order size, trade comment, and magic number, and I'm simply calling the expert base to handle that. So with the CExpert base, it passes this to the constructor for the expert base, which already has all of the code to store the size, trade comment, and the magic number. MetaTrader 4 and MetaTrader 5 handle indicators differently. So I have a block here that I'm only including if this is MQL5. So if def __ MQL5 __. And for MetaTrader 5, we set up indicators with a handle. So this is the mHandle variable from above is equal to I Ichimoku, passing the M symbol and M time frame, which also come from the parent class. And I'm just passing in the three default values here, 9, 26, and 52. If you wanted to use different values, then you can set up inputs for those and pass them through. So that sets up a handle for an Ichimoku indicator with these variables. If that fails in some way, then the handle value will equal invalid handle. And if that happens, then I set the minit result to init failed, which means that later, if we go back to V1, when I call this return expert.init result, init result will be init failed in that case, and that will stop the expert from running. But assuming we get through this without an error, or if this is MQL4 and we don't include that block at all, then I just set minit result to init succeeded. Nothing in the destructor here. And then the loop is where most of the work happens. Now there is some work done in an onTick method that is inside the expert base class, and I'll refer to the values set up by that as we go through this, but I won't describe it in detail. If you want to see how that works, then you can see the other videos in the framework series, and I will be explaining later the differences between framework 3.02 and 3.01. First thing here, I'm testing if this is a new bar. This has been set up in the parent class because I will only open trades if there's a new bar, and for any trades that are existing, the open and close of those is handled by the take profit and stop loss, which is handled by the broker, and therefore I don't need to do any processing. So if this is not a new bar, I just return and save any further work. Now the differences in the indicators. For MQL4, we call the indicator functions, Ichimoku in this case, for each value that we want returned. I want the span A for bar number 1, the span A for bar number 2, and the span B for bar number 1. Now I only have a single span B, so I haven't bothered to put a number there. The functions for that are Ichimoku, the symbol, the time frame, the 3 inputs to the Ichimoku, and in this case I'm asking for the Senkou span A value for bar number 1. For span A2, the same call, Senkou span A for bar number 2. And for span B, I'm asking for the mode underscore Senkou span B value for bar number 1. If this is MQL5, then I have this if-def MQL5. We get the values differently. I declare a buffer of doubles, and that's just an array. I set that array as series, with array set as series buff, comma, true, and that way element or index number 0 from this buffer will match candle number 0, element number 1 will match candle number 1, and so on. And then I call the copy buffer statement, passing the handle that we set up in the initialization, asking for the Senkou span A line values, beginning at number 0 for 3 values. So that will give me 0, 1, and 2, and store those in that buffer. And then to get the span A1 and span A2 values, I simply get the values from buffer 1 and buffer 2. And then I'm reusing that buffer in a second call for copy buffer, passing the handle, but this time getting this Senkou span B line, still calling 0, 3, although I don't need all of those, and passing in the buffer, and then for the span B value, I just get buffer element number 1. Then to get closing prices, I just have a double close 1 and close 2, and I'm simply calling iClose, symbol, time frame, and bar number 1, and then bar number 2. So that gives me the 2 closing prices. The take profit on new trades is going to be at span B line, as I mentioned earlier, but also if I adjust the take profit for existing trades, it's always going to be at the span B line. For new trades, the stop loss is going to be depending on whether I'm in a buying or a selling mode. So if span A is less than span B, then I'm buying. The close price for a buy trade is the bid, and I get that from this mlasttick.bid. mlasttick is also set up in the parent class as part of the onTick event. So mlasttick.bid multiplied by 2 minus span B will give me the stop loss price for a new buy trade. And if I'm not buying, then I'm selling. So mlasttick.ask multiplied by 2 minus span B gives me the stop loss price for a sell trade. Now, I may have come in here with existing trades. So I'm calling this recount function, which is also in the parent class. After recount, then the mCount variable has been set with the number of open trades. If that's greater than 0, then I'm going to update the take profit and stop loss on those trades. I'm calling this update TPSL. I'm only passing the take profit because the stop loss is a 1-to-1 ratio of take profit from open price. So I'm going to be calculating the stop loss on each trade. After that, it's possible that in this update take profit stop loss, I will close some trades if the take profit has moved past the current price or the stop loss has moved past the current price. then I won't bother resetting the take profit and stop loss prices. I'll just close those trades. So after this function call, it's possible that I've closed trades that were open before. So I'm calling recount again, which updates mcount. And I do that because if I have trades open, I'm not going to open any new trades. So here I have a test. If the count is greater than 0 at this point, then I return. Now, based on my trading rules, I'm going to buy if close 2, the closing price from bar number 2, is below the span A price for bar number 2, and then bar number 1 closes above the span A price for bar number 1 and inside the cloud. So the tests for those, if close 2 is less than span A2, so it's outside the cloud below to begin with. Close 1 is greater than or equal to span A1, so I'm putting the equal in here. You can take this out, but I'm saying close greater than or equal to. So it's closing above the A1, and close 1 is less than span B. So that takes care of ensuring that span A is less than span B, and that the price hasn't simply moved all the way through the cloud and closed outside the cloud again. So close 1 must be between span A and span B, and close 2 must be less than span A2. And if that's true, then I call buy using the trade object, which is also defined in the base class. So trade.buy, order size, symbol. I'm passing 0 here as the entry price because this trade.buy takes care of getting the current price to open the trade, and then the stop loss and take profit that were calculated earlier, and the trade comment. Else, if close 2 is above span A2, and then close 1 is less than or equal to span A1, and close 1 is greater than span B, then I have a candle that has closed outside the cloud, then the next candle closed inside the cloud, and span A is above span B. And in that case I'm selling, so the same thing, trade.sell, order size, symbol, 0 for the price, stop loss, take profit, trade comment, and then return. So that's all of the logic for actually handling the loop at each tick. The update take profit stop loss takes this one argument, double take profit. I'm declaring a variable here, double SL, so I'm calculating the stop loss for each position that I find. Now I'm looping through all of the positions I have. So for int I equals positioninfo.total. This is a function inside my positioninfo custom class, which is also part of the framework. And this exists so that I can make the same function call for MetaTrader 4 or 5. And for MetaTrader 5, this will simply return the total number of positions. For MetaTrader 4, it will return the number of orders because MetaTrader 4 doesn't have a differentiation between orders and positions. So for total number of positions minus 1, while I is greater than or equal to 0, and counting down with I minus minus. So I'm looping backwards through all of the open positions. If not, positioninfo.select by index. So this does the select on that position, and if that fails, I just continue, which will loop through to the next iteration of this loop. Then I'm testing if the positioninfo.symbol is not equal to my current symbol, or positioninfo.magic number is not equal to my current magic number, then again I'll continue, which loops through and picks up the next position. So once I get past this, the only positions I've found, or if this is MetaTrader 4, the only orders I've found, are for the current symbol and magic number, which should be for this expert, because you should make sure that magic numbers are only used once on each expert. Then I calculate the stop loss. Stop loss is positioninfo.priceopen multiplied by 2 minus the take profit price. And that gives me a 1-to-1 ratio between the current take profit and the original open price. Now I've already mentioned, in case I've moved the take profit or stop loss past the current price, or I'm about to move them past the current price, then I'm just going to close those trades immediately. So if my position type is buy, then if mlasttick.bid, if the current bid price is greater than or equal to the take profit, so the price has already gone past the new take profit, or the last tick.bid is less than or equal to stop loss, so the stop loss is now going to move past the price, then I'm just going to close with trade.positionClose and passing in positioninfo.ticket, so that's the ticket number for the currently selected position. and then continue, which will take me on to the next position in the list. Else, if position info type is sell, then we're just doing the opposite, but here I'm using the ask price. So if the ask price is less than take profit, or the ask price is greater than the stop loss, then again, I'm just closing that position. So once we get through all of that, all that's left is to modify the take profit and stop loss. In fact, I'll make a change to this. Do this all in one statement. So if the current take profit, position info.take profit, is not equal to the new take profit, or if the position info.stop loss is not equal to the new stop loss, then I simply call trade.position modify position info.ticket number stop loss take profit, and that updates the take profit and stop loss. So then after that, the broker is handling checking whether the price reaches over those limits. And that's everything for this Ichimoku Cloud Expert Advisor. I'll go on now and explain the differences between framework version 3.01 and 3.02, but if you want more information on how the entire framework operates, there will be a link in the description to the series of videos on the framework. Now to the changes in the framework. If you haven't seen any of the previous framework videos, then there is a link, as I said, and you probably should see those to understand what this is about. The framework is stored under Include, Orchard, Frameworks, and I started with version 3.00. We had version 2 years ago. And as I make changes to this framework each time, I'm creating a new version so that you can continue to use the old framework if that's what you're already using. I'm not actually updating the files in the framework. So I've made a change this time and created framework _ 3.02. Now, there are very few changes from 3.01. First is this framework file. So this is the file you can simply load in the most recent version of the framework, or if you have already defined a framework version that you're using, it will load that appropriate version. And all it does is include framework version 3.02, 1, and 0. It does those in order, and that way if you haven't already selected a framework version in your code, and I'll show you how that happens, then you'll get the most recent version, and if you have selected a version, it will step through until it finds the appropriate one. So the only change in this file is to add this include, because we now have version 3.02. Inside the framework 3.02 folder then is this framework file. That's this one. Let me open that. The only changes from 3.01 are the comment here. I've changed this version number. This said 301 before, and 302 here as well. And this is how it handles if you select a version. As soon as you load a framework file that has a version in it, as in this framework 3.02 framework.mqh, it will set this defined variable, and that way all further calls to framework.mqh will load the same version number in. And this just includes other files from the framework that are needed. Now, for the two files that have changed in the framework, in the expert folder, I changed the expert base file. What I've done here is add this Boolean member variable called mNewBar, which we used in the expert, and I created a function, Boolean new bar, that I use to set that value each time. And to go with that, I've created this date time variable, mPrevBarTime, and I'll show the new bar function in a moment. You'll see how that's used. And I also created this virtual void recount function, which we called from the expert. And so the reason I've got this new version of the framework is because I've added these functions that were needed by this expert. In the constructor for the expert base, I have the mPrevBarTime equals 0, so I'm setting that to 0, which will mean that the first time this is called, it is picked up as a new bar. I'm setting the mNewBar here inside the onTick event, so mNewBar equals new bar, that's the new bar function. And here's the new bar function. I simply pick up a variable that I'm calling current bar time, which is the iTime for the symbol time frame for bar number 0. Symbol and time frame have been set in the base class for this. If current bar time is equal to the previous bar time, then this is not a new bar, so I just return false. And if I fall through to this point, then I set mprev bar time to the current bar time and return true because we do have a new bar. Now the recount function, I set the mcount variable to 0. For int I equals positioninfo.total -1, so I'm counting backwards from total -1, while I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus. If positioninfo.select by index I, or if not positioninfo.select by index I, then continue, which simply loops or simply goes back to the beginning of the loop. And then I compare the symbol, positioninfo.symbol, if that's not equal to the current symbol, or if the positioninfo.magic is not equal to the current magic number, continue. And if I get to this point, then I just increment the count. So all that will happen through the recount function is that I will count how many trades I have open for this symbol and magic number. That's the only change in the expert base class. The other change is in the trade underscore MQL4. So here in the trade folder, and I'll just mention, if you haven't seen the framework before, I have a single trade.mqh, which depending if I'm compiling for MQL4 or MQL5 will load trade underscore MQL4 or MQL5. Most of the code in the trade MQL4 is to make this compatible with the trade.mqh file that's already delivered with MetaTrader 5. So the changes are actually inside this trade underscore MQL4.mqh file. And I've added a position modify function. So position modify already exists in the trade.mqh for MetaTrader 5, but I've had to add it here for MQL4, and I do only add these as I need them. So you find quite a lot of functions exist in trade.mqh on MQL5 that don't exist here, simply because I haven't created an expert that uses them yet. So position modify just takes the ticket number, stop loss, and a take profit. I've also, when we get down to the body of the code, modified the way the buy and the sell and the position open functions work. Now, for the buy and the sell function, they already had this test: if price is equal to 0, then set the price to buy price, which is an inbuilt function here that gives me the current buy price for the supplied symbol, and the sell does the same thing for the if price is equal to 0. So this is how I'm able to pass 0 as an opening price when I call the buy or the sell functions. But the change that I've made here is, rather than handle opening the buy or the sell here directly, I'm then just calling the position open function, passing the symbol, order type buy, the volume, price, stop loss, take profit, and the comment that were passed in here. And then the same for the sell, but passing the order type sell. I'll go to position open because that's what's being called now. So position open was an existing function. I'm now calling it from buy and sell. But the change I've made here is this: I've captured the ticket. Int ticket equals order send for MetaTrader 4. So this is the standard internal order send function which returns the ticket number, and I'm storing that ticket number in mresult.deal. Now, MetaTrader 5, when you call the trade.positionOpen function, stores the ticket number in mresult.deal, but for MetaTrader 5 it's a deal number. For MetaTrader 4 there is only one number that applies to orders, and when those orders become real trades, it's the same ticket number. MetaTrader 5 has order numbers, deal numbers, and position numbers. That concept simply doesn't exist in MetaTrader 4, so I'm storing the ticket in the deal number, which is where it would be stored in MetaTrader 5. And then this return, if the ticket's greater than 0, that means I've had a success in this open, and I just return true or false depending whether the ticket number is greater than 0. Now the position modify takes a ticket, stop loss, and take profit. So I'm capturing the current ticket number, which is the order ticket function, just in case this ticket is not the same as the currently selected ticket, and I want to reset that selected ticket back again after this. If current ticket is not equal to the supplied ticket, then I need to do an order select. Order select, ticket number supplied, and select by ticket. And if that's unsuccessful, then I simply return false from this position modify to say I was unable to select that ticket, which means I couldn't modify it. Then I do the auto modify here. I'm capturing the result, bool result equals auto modify, using the ticket, the current selected order open price, which is one of the necessary arguments to auto modify, the supplied stop loss and take profit price, and the current order expiration, which is also one of the required arguments. And then, just in case I've had to change the selected ticket, I do another test here. If current ticket is not equal to the supplied ticket, same test that I had here, then I'm going to try to select backwards again, if not auto select current ticket, which is putting me back to what was selected when we came into this function. But in this case, there's nothing I can do. If I can't go back to the ticket that was selected before, I can't do anything about that. I've only got the if statement here to prevent the compiler from issuing a warning saying that I should test the result of auto select. And then I just return result, which is from here when I process the auto modify. So that's the new function in trade_MQL4. And those are all the changes in the framework. I'll just go back now and compile that Ichimoku and run a quick demonstration. Now I have the strategy tester running here. I'll just get my crosshairs running. The span A line down here is below the span B line, so we're in a buying mode. Candle number 0, this is where I've just opened the trade. So candle number 2 closed below span A outside the cloud. Candle B closed inside the cloud, so greater than span A and less than span B. And so at the beginning of the next candle, candle 0, I've opened a trade. I have a take profit line here at span B and a stop loss line here equidistant from the entry point, so a 1-to-1. I've paused again, and here's an example of a sell trade. So candle 2 closed above span A is above span B, candle 1 closed in between span A and span B, and then I've opened a short trade at the beginning of the next candle. And so that's all for this simple Ichimoku based expert advisor. You may want to make adjustments to change the 1-to-1 ratio for the take profit and stop loss. You may want to add some inputs for different Ichimoku parameters, but that's the basics of this expert advisor. There are other Ichimoku strategies, but it was important to get this strategy written first as a basis for the others. So this just uses the 2 simple values, and the other strategies use more complex indicator combinations. If you found this useful, then please click the like button, and if you want to see more of our videos, click subscribe and then click the bell icon to be notified when we release new videos. Thank you for watching.